Coming up, the investigation into ExxonMobil reveals potential inconsistencies in the energy giant's climate policies. In newly released documents, Exxon appears to undermine efforts to tackle global warming.
So AIG is directly responsible and complicit in the destruction of our communities.
Activists targeted major cities across the planet during Climate Week with a little help from a powerful ally.
This issue is one of the issues, the biggest issue of our time, and because of that, we must be too big and too radical to ignore.
But first, a virus threatens Italy's pork industry and the lives of pigs at an animal sanctuary.
We have asked the local health authorities, in the instance that you do manage to enter, that they not be killed or put down.
Another virus poses grave risks to people in southern India. This is Just 2 Degrees on TRT World. India is trying to contain the spread of the Nipah virus in the southern Kerala state. Nipahs existed for centuries among the world's largest bats, also called flying foxes. Well, humans can catch it through direct contact with the bodily fluids of bats and pigs. To minimize risk, authorities in Kerala closed some schools and offices and suspended public transport for a while. They're also testing residents and caring for anyone who's been infected. Our friend Dr. Bharat Pankhania is back with us on the program. He's got a good idea of the threat the Nipah virus poses to local ecosystems. Dr. Always good seeing you.
Thank you.
Where did this virus come from? How dangerous is it?
Oh, the virus is pretty dangerous if it comes to infect humans. Or humans, as you said, can also get infected from infected pigs. So this virus usually resides in that belt around India, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Australia. So that part of the world. And it usually lives amongst fruit bats. So these are the flying fox bats, as they're called. But there may be other hosts that we are unaware of as well.
I understand remdesivir, which is medication used to treat COVID-19, is good for use in fighting Nipah virus, but in non-human primates.
That's correct. So it's very experimental, and we are not 100% sure that remdesivir, which was used as an antiviral for coronavirus COVID-19, would be as effective against Nipah virus, which is quite different from the COVID-19 coronavirus.
Doctor, do you see a link between habitat loss and close contact with human beings when it comes to viruses like this?
Oh, absolutely. And people like myself have been talking about it forever. So the greater the human population goes into animal territory, and the greater the encounters with keeping animals or eating them that we shouldn't really be eating, or capturing them and selling them in markets, the greater the chances of us picking up viruses that we've never heard of. And then this is the danger. This happened with Ebola, as we know, in West Africa. People brought game, wild animals to the market, and then they got Ebola, and then they spread it from person to person. So the initial one came from animals, and then the first humans got infected, and then that human infects others. So it has the potential to infect many people, even if initially the infection came from the bat in this case.
Can you just break down for us exactly what these symptoms are for anyone who contracts the Nipah virus?
So initially the symptoms can be very innocuous and nothing of note. So it's fever, aching muscles, headache, generally unwell, maybe a little bit of sickness. And then in some people, it goes on to progress with encephalitis, which is an irritation of the brain. So when your brain is irritated and inflamed, you get drowsiness, fainting, you may even get epileptic fits, and you may also get a respiratory infection. So when you've got a respiratory infection with a Nipah virus, there is a potential that you can infect other people from your respiratory secretions.
Based on many of those symptoms, it sounds very similar to other diseases How do you tell the difference, really?
Oh, we can, and it's basic epidemiology. Where have you been? What have you done? And we watch people as their disease progresses, and of course we can also have blood tests looking for specific Nipah virus genome. That's the RNA of the Nipah virus or Nipah virus antibodies. So testing, if we have to test, but you would only test if you know that this may be Nipah virus. In other words, pointless testing for it in Turkey or the United Kingdom, because at this point in time, we haven't got the presence of Nipah virus in that part of the world.
On that note, what are the chances of this spreading out of India?
Oh, every chance. So with respect to global warming, climate change, and people going into animal territory, there is a shift. There is a shift of these infections that we normally saw in tropical parts of the world, progressing further northwards and in other parts of the world where we've never seen them before. So I'm referring to malaria, dengue fever, Zika, and of course, Nipah can follow a similar trajectory.
With dengue, any of these diseases spread by mosquitoes seem to thrive in warmer weather. What kind of climate does the Nipah virus need?
So the Nipah virus lives amongst bats, essentially. So wherever these fruit bats thrive, the Nipah virus can find a host with those bats and then make a home there. So the vector, the transmitting agent, the creature that brings it to us humans at the moment are bats. Having said that, we had a huge outbreak in Malaysia very recently, and those pigs got infected by fruit bats, and then the pigs infected each other, and then the pigs can infect humans too. So it isn't necessarily only a bat issue, because a bat can infect pigs, and then the pigs are transported to another part of the world, and that infected pig can infect other people as well as other pigs.
No, as we reach into areas we have not reached into before, like tropical rainforests, we're just seeing more and more viruses come our way. Doctor, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the images you are now about to see are hard to watch. They were sent to us by animal activists in Italy and show drone footage of a farm in the Pavia region where there's an outbreak of African swine fever. ASF is a highly contagious disease that affects domestic and wild pigs with a near 100% mortality rate. It should be noted that the African swine virus is not a direct danger to humans, unlike the more popular H1N1 swine flu that could make us sick, sometimes worse. ASF is detrimental to regions that rely on and consume pork products, ham, sausages, and bacon. In the past, the virus has decimated pig farms, the primary source of income in some communities.
We're here. This is the 13th day of a sitting that we've been here for. Currently, there's been an outbreak of African swine fever, which is a viral disease that affects pigs only. It does not transmit to humans. There's been outbreaks in some intensive pig farms in this area. For this reason, the only way to, let's say, stop the very contagious viral disease spreading is to basically kill all of the farms, all of the pigs in the farms. So currently, there's been around 20,000 pigs killed so far to date. They are continuing to gas them as we speak in nearby farms. So the local health authorities have basically proclaimed that all pigs should be put down, even the ones that live here at Associazione, which is an animal sanctuary. So animals that are not destined to be food, they're not destined to go back into the food chain, animals that have already been saved from the system. So we're finding ourselves here today to stop this. Now, the first few days, we were around in the town, in this small town, to give our support morally, and we were ready, obviously, to step in the instance that they would try and come to the gates. And for 6-7 days, nothing happened. We were mediating with the local health authorities, trying to gain time. because unfortunately swine fever has also entered the sanctuary.
So the pigs at that farm are infected?
Yes, yes.
What would you like to have happen if they are already infected?
Well, what we would want is obviously for them to be looked after by the people that have always looked after them and saved them in the first place. They are obviously, unfortunately, more than half have passed away already, but symptoms have only lasted a couple of days. And we have asked the local health authorities, in the instance that you do manage to enter, that they not be killed or put down like they have been all the other animals, because these are, they're like anybody's cats or dogs. They are looked after. They are the same as other animals. So that's what we asked. We managed to obtain a promise from the local authorities that they would do this more humanely with euthanasia, and that we would have at least a day's notice. Now, this didn't happen. So last Friday, we found ourselves having to rush here in front of the gates because they turned up here basically wanting to enter and kill all of the pigs that were here, that were left.
So because you had a sit-in, you stopped them from killing the pigs?
Yes, absolutely. It's only because of the people. So obviously we've been spreading and creating awareness on all social media platforms throughout the last 13 days. And we've been calling activists and people from all over Italy. We've got people from Tuscany, from Veneto, from all regions. People have been sleeping in cars. People have been sleeping in local B&Bs. We've had people bring us food. So the first few days we weren't outside of the sanctuary because of biosecurity measures. We were not coming here so that we were not, possibly spreading the virus anywhere else. But as you can see, since Friday, we have been here and taking turns to sleep here because obviously we're afraid that they will come back. So on Friday, we managed to mediate for hours here. Local authorities, they eventually ended up going. We had people chained inside the premises to the gates surrounding all of the area, and a load of people arrived. They had shut the roads off so people couldn't arrive with their cars, but people managed to get here through walking basically. And because of, I think, a high number of people that did arrive, obviously they didn't want to come, so they eventually left with the promise that they would not come back and eventually let the pigs die, because they are sure that they will all die. Now we check on obviously the people who live here today. Some of them are not very well, but a lot of them also have no symptoms. So we want to give them a chance to, live out their life the way that it should be.
Valentina, you mentioned that there's no threat to human beings, but is there a threat to other wildlife in the region?
No. This is only, swine fever can only be transmitted between swines and pigs. So the only animal that is also, contagious is obviously wild boars. The problem is animals that are going inside intensive pig farms and obviously then moving about and spreading. People that work in these farms are moving around with their cars. So lorries. So, as it's very contagious, and we don't know if all the biosecurity measures have been followed. So this is how it eventually got here.
So the authorities said that they believe that all the pigs will eventually die. Is that what will happen?
We don't know that. This disease hasn't been studied enough to know exactly what will happen, because they want to preserve the economic patrimony that is in this region. There's more pigs in Lombardy than human beings. There's so many intensive farms here. It's so obviously to stop all of the other farms being having the same virus, they're just putting, as soon as there's one outbreak, they just have all the pigs put down. So this is causing obviously a big economic loss, and this is why they are so hell bent on getting in here and killing and ruling out what they basically set out to do.
So Valentina, I know Italy is a big pork consumer. Talk about the effects that the African swine flu has actually had on the country as a whole.
I don't think I'm too prepared to respond to that question. African swine fever has been around for a long time. There's been some smaller outbreaks, I think, in the past couple of years, but in this moment in time, it seems to be spreading a lot bigger. So it is very much under the attention also of the European Union, because as we know, our agricultural system makes a lot of money. So it's nice, and that's why they're so, it's not something that they're just gonna let them get away with, let us get away with.
Before I let you go, I know the authorities, as we said that they will not return, but it seems as though you do not believe them. How long are you planning to stay out there?
Well, this is the thing. Since Friday, it's all been quite calm here, even though we've been taking turns in staying here. Until there's even one pig alive, we will be here because we don't trust them. And only a few hours ago, we had a terrible night last night where police and authorities passed multiple times. They wanted to see our documents. I think there's been local people now complaining about the fact that we've been kind of sleeping in our cars around the sanctuary. But we're just here to, to make sure that nobody comes back. So at the moment, we're in a situation where the two entrances to the road that lead to the sanctuary have been shut off. We've had a drone over our heads, so I don't know if they're trying to figure out how many of us there are. And we don't know. We don't know if they're going to come and try and move us with force. We're going to resist peacefully, but we are going to resist.
There is a new twist in the investigation into ExxonMobil that started in 2015. While the oil and gas giant has publicly agreed there was a link between its business dealings and climate change, executives were seeing the opposite behind closed doors. The company previously admitted global warming posed grave risks for life on the planet. Exxon even supported the Paris Accord, but the company seemed preoccupied with the extent of the danger and was dissatisfied with scientists and media's worst-case climate projections. Rex Tillerson, who served under the Trump administration as Secretary of State, said in 2011 that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's scientific warnings about the need to curb greenhouse gas emissions were, quote-unquote, not credible. Now, the world saw determined global activism during Climate Week. The annual event saw tens of thousands of protesters in downtown New York City in mid-September. It was a peaceful and organized protest that targeted the federal administration. People held signs that said, "Biden, end fossil fuels kill, and declare a climate emergency."
We are making sure that we are bringing a message to our leaders that we cannot tolerate any more fossil fuel development in this country or anywhere else. We want to make sure that Biden actually commits to his promises that he made to young people when he was running for president. And that means no more fossil fuels. Climate change is a huge problem for our generation. We feel really angry that there's a world that we're going to grow up in that's being decided for us. And it's a world that doesn't seem to be safe for us. It's a world that we feel left out of, and a world that we're going to have to deal with. And so instead of just giving up and letting that world be decided for us, we're actually mobilizing in the streets to make sure that our leaders know that they cannot do that, and that we will do everything in our power necessary to take the power we need in order to inherit a world that is dignified and safe for all people, not just a wealthy few.
We are double way impacted. Our back home impacted, we impacted here. We care climate. We clear climate. We need climate justice. We really need Biden administration declare climate emergency and do the best to repair our climate crisis.
And they were in the company of a powerful climate ally in New York. Progressive Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spoke to the tens of thousands of people there. She criticized the government for its continued support of oil and gas exploration, like the Alaska Willow Project President Biden approved earlier this year.
I'm so honored to be here today, shoulder to shoulder with you all, because we are all here for the same purpose, to protect the planet, the people, and make sure that we end fossil fuels across the globe. This issue is one of the issues, the biggest issue of our time, and because of that, we must be too big and too radical to ignore. We will not give up, and that is what we are here to do today, to tell our leaders, from President Biden to the UN General Assembly, to all of our elected officials, that we demand to change. It will happen now. It begins today. It is occurring today, and it's because of you.
thousands of people marched in Berlin too in a strike driven by mostly youth-led local and international climate groups. A week before the protest, meteorologists predicted there'd be record temperatures for Germans in September. Protesters say they're in this for the long haul and will continue their action to prove to the government that interest in the transition to renewable energy is growing.
Wir protestieren heute für mehr Klimagerechtigkeit und für konsequente und sozial gerechte Maßnahmen von der Politik. Die Bundesregierung macht gerade viel zu wenig gegen die Klimakrise und tut gleichzeitig zu wenig, um die Menschen abzusichern und zu unterstützen.
In Paris, people protested against the East African crude oil pipeline. The project is meant to transport crude oil from Uganda's Lake Albert to a port on the Indian Ocean coast of Tanzania. The Ugandan oil field project is expected to cause 34 million tons of carbon emissions annually. But there is some local support for it, as the project will create jobs and boost the economy.
Parce que la crise climatique est une crise majeure du XXIe siècle et si on n'agit pas tout de suite, en fait on est tout simplement foutu et c'est une priorité absolue et c'est pour défendre la planète, c'est pour défendre aussi les générations futures.
Ouais, en fait, je pense que c'est important que tout le monde s'engage parce que c'est notre problème. C'est en fait sauver le climat, c'est aussi sauver l'humanité parce qu'on vit tous sur la planète et il faut s'engager tous, pas juste les gens, mais je pense les jeunes.
Aujourd'hui, le projet ICOP, c'est un projet qui est assez symbolique et synthétique de tout ce qu'on ne veut plus dans ce monde-là. D'un point de vue d'abord écologique, climatique, c'est énormément d'émissions de gaz à effet de serre si le projet est construit et quand il sera en marche. C'est aller chercher de nouveau du pétrole alors que le GIEC a dit on ne va plus chercher de pétrole nulle part, on arrête d'exploiter ces énergies-là. C'est aussi un projet qui va détruire énormément de biodiversité dans les zones qui sont concernées. Donc on parle du parc naturel des Murchison Falls en Ouganda.
And activists held a small gathering, just 4 of them really, in front of Rome's Colosseum. The sign here that you're about to see, there it is, says Fiori dal fossile, which basically means out with fossil fuels. It was a tough summer for Italy. Locals had to deal with devastating forest fires, then terrible floods. That's why they're asking the government for an equitable and inclusive ecological transition.
Io spero in un futuro più sostenibile, ma spero soprattutto che lo slogan del futuro diventi sempre più uno slogan del presente. Quindi parlare sempre di futuro, del domani che vogliamo, sembra quasi raccontarci una bugia. In realtà quello che vogliamo è un presente migliore, un presente che sia più sostenibile, tanto dal punto di vista ambientale quanto socio-economico, perché protestare oggi qui per dire che vogliamo meno energia a combustibili fossili e quindi meno stati, meno multinazionali che lucrano e fanno i soldi su questo vuol dire anche dire che vogliamo più giustizia sociale, meno disuguaglianze e più equità.
Brazil's Mines and Energy Minister Alexandre Silveira says the cost of the country's energy transition must be shared by the world.
O custo da transição e da salvaguarda do planeta, ele deve ser, nesse momento, democratizado no mundo. Os biocombustíveis são para o Brasil como o petróleo é para a Arábia Saudita e para os países do Oriente Médio. Ou seja, são a nossa grande prioridade. Mas o petróleo, que os países industrializados, os países desenvolvidos, com as suas matrizes naturalmente pela industrialização, menos limpa e renovável que o Brasil e os países do sul global, possam monetizar essa transição. Até em que tempo se dará a transição energética definitiva? Ninguém consegue responder isso. Eu entendo que ela depende muito para ser acelerada, para ter mais celeridade, para ter mais vigor, da sensibilidade dos países desenvolvidos. A própria palavra transição energética fala por si só. É transição energética, não é mudança energética. Portanto, o nosso petróleo ainda no Brasil são recursos que são utilizados inclusive para financiar saúde e educação através do fundo. Nós queremos fazer isso de forma ambientalmente correta, nunca se discutiu não cumprir com todas as condicionantes ambientais necessárias a se pesquisar essa região de forma ao mais irrestrito respeito ambiental, mas o que nós não podemos abrir mão é da nossa soberania de conhecer as nossas potencialidades minerais. Então nós vamos precisar de buscar o equilíbrio entre desenvolvimento econômico com frutos sociais para combater miséria, combater desigualdade, gerar oportunidade e sustentabilidade. Então nós temos que convergir em políticas públicas que sejam adequadas do ponto de vista ambiental, mas que não percam de vista as nossas necessidades imediatas.
The 3 giant-sized fried eggs appeared in Brazil's Sao Paulo to draw attention to global warming. The so-called art accident sculptures belong to the Dutch artist Henk Hofstra. Sao Paulo is facing seasonal heat records, which meteorologists forecast will peak at around 37 degrees Celsius. Before we end this episode, take a look at this. Prince William again, he visited the Billion Oyster Project. The NGO in New York is all about depolluting the city's harbor waters using the mollusks. Why oysters? Well, an adult oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water a day. They help clarify the water and remove certain pollutants, including nitrogen. A billion oysters would do a lot of good.